Gudave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. So, Pranam, welcome to you all, and offering our prayers to Sri Sri Guru Gauranga Parampara, Sri Radha and Krishna, all the various expressions of the Absolute as our saintly hearts and loving hearts. We are beginning today officially a series of study of the Srimad Bhagavatam that we have called The Living Heart of the Srimad Bhagavatam, a journey into its essential message. So thank you so much to all of you for joining the assembly today, for joining the circle. And let's see where this journey takes us. I'm very, very excited, very happy to be able to do that, and praying that it may be sustainable, time-wise, energy-wise, everything-wise for each one of us. So today we are having an introduction to the Bhagavatam, and probably not only today, but for the first month, I think we will be basically warming up before daring to go to verse 111. Right? Because I think it's very, very important to have a few meetings of preparation, introduction, sambandha, right? Like orientation, what we are supposed to be doing here. What's the Bhagavatam? What does it mean to study the Bhagavatam? How to approach scripture? What's the scriptural landscape in which the Bhagavatam emerges, and which will be the methodology? What's the intention of us getting together for these Bhagavatam studies? Let's try to make all that clear, to clear the ground properly, to make proper fertile soil, so whatever seeds are put there will eventually blossom and bear sweet fruit. So yeah, that will be the intention, I will say, of these first 4 lectures during this first month, trying to get a better understanding of what's the Bhagavatam even before we open it, basically. How to build a foundation, right? When you're about to build a house, you work deeply on the foundation, and someone may say, oh, the house has even never started yet. But that's very important work, groundwork, foundation work. So today will be one of the introduction to the introduction, let's put it that way. And Srila Siddha Maharaj will say we are students forever, so there is no problem to remain inhabiting introductory spaces as long as we are dealing with reality. An introduction to ultimate reality is still super deep and super glorious. So I'm very happy and very honored to be sharing this journey along with each one of you. So today, my main intention in today's first gathering and first introduction meeting is, again, sharing the intention behind why we are doing this, why I'm doing this, why I've considered the possibility of having this series, and which will be the main structure of our study, which will be the main methodology. I don't want to use the word structure in a way that sounds too structured. So let's begin with the intention, and then let's move to the methodology. So we have a clear idea of how the journey will hopefully unfold during the coming months, years. Eternity is on our side, so no rush. So sankalpa first, right? Like with every important moment in life, in every sacred ritual we have in Sanskrit, this term sankalpa, which means intentionality, like invoking intentionality. Why I'm doing this? So we do not just behave mechanically, just following the motions, but invest our will. Why we are here. I will tell you why I'm here and why I'm organizing this. Why you are here, that you have to figure out. And you let me know if you want. But why the inspiration came to embark upon this adventure of studying the Srimad Bhagavatam. Well, of course, the very first things that come to mind is Srimad Bhagavatam is basically our main book in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. Of course, it's always difficult to say a main book. I don't want to sound better words. It's like saying what's your favorite place of Parikram in Vrindavan or something like that, right? You don't want to sound elitistic. But in one sense, we could say that most of our scriptures are building up to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many others are afterthought to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in one sense, the Srimad Bhagavatam occupies this central throne. That is, basically, as we spoke recently in our Gaur Purnima lecture, how the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya, Gaudiya Vaishnava movement is a byproduct of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in particular approached and embraced the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because other Sampradayas also embrace the Bhagavatam, but our Sampradaya is a result of a particular embrace to the Bhagavatam that Mahaprabhu gave to the Bhagavatam, in particular understanding and a way of relishing and experiencing the Bhagavatam. So that's very important for us. Again, our whole tradition comes from the womb of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is so incredible that God himself takes lessons of the Bhagavatam, right? In Gaur Lila, Mahaprabhu is taking daily classes, daily Bhagavatam classes. So it's not only you or us, okay, we need to go and study the Bhagavatam and take classes. No, but Mahaprabhu perpetually in Nitya Navadvip is taking daily Srimad Bhagavatam lessons from Sri Radha in the form of Gadadhar Pandit. Krishna as a student, divine love personified as the Supreme Goddess as the teacher. And therefore we can also begin, I forgot to invoke this mantra, but we can include this in our weekly Mangalacharya, invoking the blessings of Sri Gadadhar Pandit, who is the Srimad Bhagavatam speaker par excellence, who was speaking Bhagavatam to Mahaprabhu himself. Sridhar Maharaj composed a beautiful verse in this regard, one of my favorite ones, so let me invoke it now. It's never too late for a further layer of Mangalacharya. Nilam bodhitate sadasva vidaha kripan vitam bandhavam Srimad Bhagavati Katha Madiraya Sanjivayam Bhatiya Srimad Bhagavatam Sada Sanayana Ashrupayanai Pujayam Goswami Pravaro Gadadhar Vibhor Bhuyat Made Kadgati. So this is a pranam mantra to Gadadhar Pandit that describes how at the shores of the ocean in Puri, Mahaprabhu is fainting in ecstasy. Gadadhar Pandit, fainting in ecstasy arguably by hearing from Gadadhar Pandit the Bhagavatam. And then Gadadhar Pandit is reviving Mahaprabhu from his ecstasy by continuing to recite the Bhagavatam. So the Bhagavatam sends you on a trance, and the Bhagavatam brings you back from the trance and sends you on another trance altogether. So Srimad Bhagavatam, Gadadhar Pandit is pouring, Srila Sridhar Maharaj will say, the wine, the sacred intoxicated wine of the Bhagavatam into Mahaprabhu's ears. He faints, and then he is revived like a sanjivani, that these life-giving herbs brought back to life by the Bhagavatam. And how does Gadadhar Pandit worships the Bhagavatam? And sometimes Bhagavatam is worshipped like with puja, the book is offered artik. In this case, Gadadhar Pandit has all the artik paraphernalia in his own constitution. So no need to offer a conch shell with water, just copious tears are coming from his eyes and washing away the ink from the pages. That's the Gadadhar Pandit Srimad Bhagavatam, blank pages, but filled with tears of divine love. That's the ultimate content of the Bhagavatam. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, in that way, Gadadhar Pandit offers puja to the Bhagavatam through the water of his tears, and then he concludes, Goswami Prabharo Gadadhara Vibhur Bhuyad Made Kadgati. May I swim into that current, connecting with the tears falling from the eyes of Gadadhar. May I one-heartedly enter into that current and swim there forever. To the best of the Goswamis, Sri Gadadhar Pandit, Sri Radha and Gaur Lila, I offer my pranam. So, praying for the blessings of Sri Radha Thakurani, Sri Gadadhar Pandit, Sriman Mahaprabhu. We continue with our reflections of why we are doing this, basically. So as I said, Bhagavatam, the main of our books, the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya coming as a result of that, God himself taking lessons on the Bhagavatam on a more subjective, personally biased level. I love the Srimad Bhagavatam, so it's another great excuse for me to indulge in it. while supposedly be sharing it with you. Of course, that's also part of it. That's the highest way of relishing, not just reading it by yourself, but the back and forth in Sangha. I generally like to read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam every year, once per year. Sometimes it can happen and sometimes it doesn't happen, but it's some kind of a natural part of my life, so to say. And in the past, I've given a few studies of the Bhagavatam. I remember in Spanish, like 10 years ago, I was still living in Argentina. We will do a whole study of the Bhagavatam for 6 months. I mean, again, not verse by verse, but the main sections. Some years ago, also I did like in English, a series, but which just small 3-minute clips showing the summaries of each canto of the Bhagavatam. You can find those still in my YouTube channel. There are like 48 short clips called Bhagavat Glimpses. So they are very short, encapsulated versions of the Bhagavatam. And of course, as you may know, I've given a few considerable series on different sections of the Bhagavatam that we have studied in the past, like especially the 6 Gopi Gitas, right? Brahmar Gita, Venu Gita, Jugal Gita, and so on. The Gopi Gita per se, Jugal Gita, and so on. Then we studied the Brahma Stuti some years ago, the prayers of Vritrasura, the prayers that Bhagavan offers to his devotees when he's praying in front of Ambarish and Durvasa Muni. So in many ways, all this is studying the Bhagavatam, right? But this happened a few years ago. For the last few years, we didn't have any official series connected to the Bhagavatam, so somehow I was missing sharing the Srimad Bhagavatam more directly, if you will. And I clarify more directly because, to be honest, in my feeling and experience, the books I'm writing or the lectures I'm giving, the books are filled with references to the Srimad Bhagavatam primarily. So when I'm not officially writing a book about the Bhagavatam, my books so far are not like study guides to the Bhagavatam. For me, all those books are revolving around the Bhagavatam, trying to point to the essence and trying to gain a holistic, healthy reading of the Bhagavatam. My lectures, I try to do the same. So for me, officially or not, whatever content I am sharing, at least in intention, I try it to be Srimad Bhagavatam-ish, if you will. And of course, if this is so, you may ask, okay, if that's the case, then why we need an official study of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Well, maybe because not everyone can grasp what I just said. Maybe not everyone can feel, oh, this whole book is about the Bhagavatam, this particular lecture is about the Bhagavatam. Sometimes we may need to put Srimad Bhagavatam in the title of a series and refer to specific verses and feel I'm studying the Bhagavatam. And it's fine. I'm not criticizing that. Some of us may need an official addressing of the book, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, to feel more connected to it. There is a place for that. So that's part also of the intention of why we are doing this series. Also, as I mentioned some days ago in a short clip that I made announcing this series, I know many devotees that unfortunately have been sometimes overwhelmed by the Bhagavatam for different reasons. Maybe overwhelmed by the size of the book. Just because you hear a book, you think, okay, it's a book, but it's like a multi-volume thing, so to say. So may feel overwhelmed, intimidated by the size. I have to read that. I have to finish, like some social pressure, you have to finish the book. Like if you can't finish the Bhagavatam, right? Some other people may have been traumatized even, unfortunately. Some religious PTSD by some of the sections of the Bhagavatam being presented in a very wrong way, weaponized way. Sometimes trying to use sections or verses in a certain way to, I don't know, you name it, push down women or make other people feel unworthy and extremely falling or unloved by God, easily chastised. And for that we go to the descriptions of the hellish planets and we have everyone frozen in terror, and it's easy to manipulate people from a place of fear. So unfortunately, the Bhagavatam sometimes has been misused in that way. It's a great dishonor. So hopefully we can do something to redeem that and to heal whatever needs to be healed. Some other people may have been also confused even by sections from the Bhagavatam that may find difficult to understand, sections that may not seem too relevant, too important, too substantial. some others may feel overwhelmed by the huge variety of themes, and they may seem like totally disconnected from one another, and that may leave them wondering, is there any like golden thread or silver thread, as we have said, in the Bhagavatam, or is just like a brainstorming of multiple ideas put together in one book, like chaotic brainstorming and what to do with that, right? So how to find some coherence and some golden thread there. I don't know, some other devotees, and I'm saying all this by hearing things I've heard from devotees. I'm not creating this stuff. Some others told me, okay, this is an ancient piece of wisdom, but in one sense, I don't find how relevant, how it's speaking to me in the here and now, in my particular situation, how much relevance it is in the Bhagavatam to our contemporary life. And again, many times all of this has nothing to do with the Bhagavatam, but many times the people who are saying that is, they are coming with a particular experience of the Bhagavatam according to how the Srimad Bhagavatam was presented to them, explained to them. So, and of course, apart from some of these negative reasons or traumatizing reasons or confusing, overwhelming reasons, there are others who feel genuinely touched and inspired by the Srimad Bhagavatam, which doesn't mean that at the same time they didn't experience any of the other things at the same time. So there can be this kind of mixed feelings. Oh, this inspires me, this section, this verse, this narrative, this lila, and at the same time, this other stuff is there. So, but because I'm touched, I want to not only make sense of those other sections that so far do not make sense to me, but also I want to go deeper in those sections that touched me. You know? So I believe that all of you are here today because of that also, not just out of superficial curiosity or out of Bhakti Rasa paying all of you to show face in Zoom or whatever. So for different reasons, you are all coming here, not only trying to heal and gain a better understanding, but going deeper into what already has moved and touched your heart and transformed you and brought you to where you are now as a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So again, because all of the above and so many other possibilities in between them, and again, despite I personally consider that what I try to write about and speak about tries to be all centered around the Bhagavatam, and I felt, okay, we need to make an official series of the Bhagavatam. But hopefully at the end of this series, if there is an end, right? Because the Bhagavatam itself says, right? Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Serve the Bhagavatam Nityam, perpetually, eternally. So there's no end to this. There's no end to, we cannot finish the book, finish the reading, finish the study. It's a never-ending thing. If not, you go back to evolution and divine love and remember that the nature of reality is such, ever-evolving. But hopefully at the official end of this series, if there is such still, hopefully we can get a glimpse of how studying the Bhagavatam, doesn't only happen when we have an official study about the book. Hopefully we realize, as I'll try to explain in the upcoming introductory lectures, how the Bhagavatam is not limited to a book, how the Bhagavatam is not a book, how there is more than one book that we can refer to as a Bhagavatam. So how the reality of what we call the Bhagavatam is way bigger, more comprehensive than what we can imagine. So hopefully as a fruit of our study we can get to that place. And when we read other books, meet other people, situations in life, we realize, oh, this is also Bhagavatam. Like I always quote when someone spoke to Srila Prabhupada about Joan of Arc, this Christian said, he said, oh, she's Bhagavatam. So hopefully we can reach to that place of depth and universality and at the same time specificity, because the Bhagavatam has both. And hopefully at the end of the day, our own life becomes Bhagavatam. Our own life story becomes one page in the Bhagavatam. That it says sometimes there is a blank page in the Bhagavatam waiting for you to fill it with your own life journey. But we'll be talking more about that in the upcoming lectures. I don't want to digress too much from today's intention, which is speaking about the intention of the meeting and the methodology. But again, in brief, the Srimad Bhagavatam is, as we always say, is ultimately a love story. That it's inviting us to similarly fall in love with that love story, to fall in love with the Bhagavatam, and by extension, by a proper understanding of what Bhagavatam is, you ultimately, as I like to say, to fall in love with the totality of reality in an absolute way. So again, one of the main intentions of this series is not only heal from religious PTSD that we may have acquired in the name of the Bhagavatam, not only to get an accurate understanding of the text also, but again, ultimately, as the text itself points to relish the Srimad Bhagavatam perpetually and to serve the Bhagavatam. Relish is not like a selfish, separate enjoyment. But the third verse of the Bhagavatam, as we will see eventually, says, Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam Alayam. So drink this sacred juice of the Bhagavatam alayam. Means even in a post-liberated state. You become liberated, you can still continue relishing, drinking this juice, relishing the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is not just a means to a goal that is different from the means itself. So we want to live in the Bhagavatam. Again, we want to inhabit the pages, so to say. We want to make our life a page in the Bhagavatam. And again, it's not a book, it's a living thing. That's why we are calling it the living heart of the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam has a beating, living heart. And this is one of our main devotional practices. So we are engaging in one of these. Srila Rupa Goswami mentions 64 devotional practices. And after the number 59 in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions 5 more at the end that he already mentioned. Like a way of saying, if I were to summarize this first 59, these 5 will be. Sometimes there's called Panchanga Bhakti, or Bhakti, 5-limbed Bhakti. Sadhu Sanganama Kirtan Bhagavat Shravan Mathura Basa Srimurti Shradaya Sevan, put in Bengali by Krishna-das Kaviraj Goswami. One of those is, in that translation, is Bhagavat Shravan, to listen to the Bhagavatam. Now, how Srila Rupa Goswami mentions it in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says, Srimad Bhagavatartanam Ashvado Rasikai Saha, which basically means to relish the Bhagavatam. Not just to listen, not just to go to the class and sit and fall asleep, like for many people that has been the standard. Okay, Bhagavatam class means nap time. Right? And there's a whole thing about that, and there's some curse in between. You go to the class and you fall asleep during it. That's not the idea, right? Srimad Bhagavatam is not the ideal nap companion, right? It's not like a soundtrack to accompany you during your sleep. I mean, you can go on to sleep and put the Bhagavatam in the background. That's another way, okay? And hopefully you are dreaming and Bhagavatam is there. But when you go to a Bhagavatam sharing, the idea is that you relish it. Rupa Goswami used the word asvada, which means to relish. The artanam, the purports of the Bhagavatam, different layers of meaning. Rasika saha, with rasikas, with other people that are relishing similarly. So relishing together. There's a togetherness in the relishing of the different layers of purport and meaning of the Bhagavatam. So again, this is not just a formal, protocolar reading or hearing, but we need to listen in a way that we relish, that we feel something, that we are transformed, that we understand, that it makes sense, that it touches our heart. We can touch the heart of the Bhagavatam, and when we touch the heart of the Bhagavatam, our heart is touched. So as listeners, we need to be open to be transformed by the text. We will be talking more about in other introductory lectures about the proper approach to sacred revelation. But I'm giving some trailers of this here. So as listeners, we need to be transformed by the text, to be open to be read by the text. No? We are supposed to be opened by the books. No, it's not that I'm the one opening the book. No, I'm to be opened by the book, to be disarmed by sacred revelation. How willing I am to allow the text to read me. How I'm willing to be seen, to be read, rather than the other way around. Right? That's real darshan, to be seen, to be read. So anyhow, that's part of the intention of this series, to provide a pratyaksha in Sanskrit. Pratyaksha means a personal experience of the Bhagavatam. Not just intellectual curiosity, but an undeniable personal experience that is is too real to deny. Maybe too vast to fully comprehend, but too real to deny. And that will mark us forever. That will create a momentum that will keep us with faith even in the midst of our most difficult moments. A first-hand experience of the Bhagavatam that can provide all perfection, basically. That's what happened with Parikshit Maharaj. Parikshit Maharaj listened to the Bhagavatam 1 week, he attained all perfection. He didn't chant one single round, he didn't play mridanga, he didn't distribute books, he didn't collect money, he didn't do any of the other forms of bhakti. He just listened to the Bhagavatam in the proper way. After a week, Gaur Hari Bol. So he had a personal experience by the way he listened, and that bore all perfection to him. And actually the whole Bhagavatam is the result of Vyasadev's personal experience, right? We call it Shabda. Bhagavatam is Shabda, revealed sound, but that Shabda is Vyasadev's Pratyaksha, Vyasadev's personal enlightened experience that becomes Shabda, that becomes revelation. But we need to have our own personal experience. It's not enough that Vyasa has his own personal experience in Samadhi. Great, thank you Vyasadev for that. But his personal experience and his Samadhi is inviting us to have our own personal experience and our own Samadhi. Because the Bhagavatam was spoken in Samadhi. So unless we enter into Samadhi, we cannot understand it fully. The Srimad Bhagavatam is coming out of Vyasa's personal experience. Unless we have a personal experience, we may not be able to connect with the personal experience of the author, so to say. So all perfection can be attained by being part of this series. I should have added that into the flyer, right? You can attain all perfection warranted by participating in this online group study. And again, of course, Parikshit Maharaj is someone who gives example of all perfection by hearing the Bhagavatam. Then Shukadev Goswami will say, he's called the Acharya of Kirtan. But interestingly, he didn't play mridanga or kartal, he spoke the Bhagavatam. That's a unique form of Kirtan also. He attained all perfection by Kirtan. Here, Kirtan means to speak about love. Whenever you speak about love, because the Bhagavatam is all about it, that's Kirtan. It's not that you need mridanga, kartal. Whenever you are singing poetry, the Bhagavatam is a poetic treatise. The poetry of the Bhagavatam, all perfection can come from that. So I hope I'm giving you a clear idea of how to approach the Bhagavatam and how a proper approach, whether it's listening to it, repeating it, speaking about the essence of the Bhagavatam in the form of love. All perfection can come from it. Even if we have not officially attained all perfection. What's all perfection, by the way? It's an ongoing affair. But we can gain proper first-hand experiences that will take us to all perfection. Right? Like when Krishna-das Kaviraj Goswami says, Sadhu Sangha Sarva Shastra Koi Lava Matra Sadhu Sangha Sarva Siddhi. Even from one micro moment of Sadhu Sangha, all perfection comes. Doesn't mean that you have the perfection in the moment, but you receive enough experiences that give you faith to pursue a path that eventually leads you to that ultimate blossoming. So anyhow, these are some thoughts about the first part of today's sharing, which is sankalpa, intentionality, why we are doing this, which is the intention behind this study. At least from my side, again, I hope you may relate to something of what I just said so far. So, and if you have your own intentions and other reasons for being here, of course, you are more than welcome. You don't need to be fully aligned with my own intentions. After all, we all have our own unique journey, and we are all invited to have our own unique experience of the Bhagavatam. So let's go to the second part of today's sharing, which is how we plan to structure our study. And again, by saying structure, you already know me by this point. I'm not that much of a structured person, though some structure is necessary. We have nothing against that, but not to any suffocating point. Chaos and order have to coexist in peace. But before going to the methodology and the structure of the study, a few technical details for you to know also how to navigate, especially those who are joining live in Zoom now. So I'll be speaking every single meeting for an hour or so. I'll try my best. to not go beyond that. And then we'll be opening the space for questions, of course, for those who are connected live in Zoom, for half an hour approx. So the idea is that maximum the meeting lasts for 1 hour and a half approx. So, but for the sake of clarity and conciseness, in this case, I will request you or invite you, those who have questions, to write them down as clearly and concisely as possible and share them with me by private message in Zoom. Okay? Whenever they come, if a question came now, you can just send it now and we will be reading it later. You don't need to wait when I'm done for you to write your question. So if you want, you articulate your question whenever it comes as clearly and concisely as possible. It's a good exercise for all of us. And you can send it to me by private message via Zoom. If you don't know how to do that, you can send it in the public chat in Zoom, but maybe you can preface the question with an interrogation mark in the first line. So when I go in the midst of other messages, I know this is a question here. Okay? So that's for you to have an idea of how we plan to structure that part. And also during the classes, especially after our first introductory classes, when we are starting more to address certain particular verses, I will be referring to various verses of the Bhagavatam mostly, maybe verses from other scriptures. But to be honest, guys, I'm not good for PowerPoint. I don't like PowerPoints much, to be honest, because it's like forces me to follow a script. And if in between something comes, I need to honor that. But if I'm referring to some verses, then what I will do is I will ask you to have, for example, it may be a little impractical to have all the volumes of the Bhagavatam next to you. You can resort online to the database. I'm sure most of you are familiar, database.com. You can go to Bhagavatam and then you can go to canto, chapter, verse, and you can see the Sanskrit that I may be referring to. And we may go to the translation, sometimes reading Srila Prabhupada's translation, sometimes referring to other varieties of translation from other acharyas, because Sanskrit can be translated in more than one way, just in case. But I will say that's a good resource for you to have at hand during our lectures, in case you want to be nerdy, like I will be, and go to the verses and check all that. And if not, again, the lectures will be recorded in YouTube and you can watch them again, put pause, do your research. But yeah, there is something that I expect from you as part of the class. You have to do some little work, so to say. We have to make some effort as students, and we are all students, by the way. Krishna-das Kaviraj Goswami will say, Siddhanta valiya chittana karalas, ihahaiti Krishna lage sudrida manas. Try to understand Siddhanta. Try to understand the proper conclusions of things. And then he said, na karalas, he said, don't be lazy. Like probably implying that we are lazy, or probably implying that it takes some effort to get a proper grasp of things. We cannot expect just to reach the most healing, deep, profound, comprehensive understanding of the Bhagavatam without any effort from our part as students. Not an extreme effort, but some effort. It's our offering, our dedication, our sacrifice and service to the Bhagavatam. In fact, the main listener of the Bhagavatam and the main example for us as listeners is Parikshit Maharaj. And Parikshit means pari iksha. Iksha means to look, and pari means in all directions. Like implying to inquire comprehensively. Now, Parikshit Maharaj was looking in all directions for Krishna, with a deep thirst, with a genuine inquiry. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, the same. Krishna uses the word asheshana regarding, I think it's Sanjay actually, how to remember the Bhagavad Gita. The very asheshana means endlessly contemplate over and over again the contents of the Gita, the conversation, etc., etc. So anyhow, as much as it's sustainable for you, but boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, guys, family tribe, be good pupils, be good students. I'll try to be a good student myself. Let's try to support each other in that. And again, if you feel you don't want to be taking notes of everything I'm saying, you don't need to do that. You can then look it again. It will be uploaded in YouTube later the same day, and you can take your time. Whatever works better for you. You have to also find what works better for you. So, regarding the methodology that I was talking about, obviously, I hope you by this time understand, we are doing a weekly series, right? Meeting once in a week. So we won't be studying one verse per week, right? If we will do that, I made the calculation, that will take us 346 years to finish the study. And we are not in Satya Yuga, guys, so we cannot take that risk. So we won't be doing what's called sometimes linear reading, like verse by verse, word by word. I have nothing against that. I'm just saying I don't have the time to do that. So we are meeting once in a week. And again, even if we will do that, any verse, we can stay with one verse forever, actually. So that's an important point, right? There are some acharyas who have written, for example, to the very first verse of the Bhagavatam, verse 111, 100 commentaries to the same verse, quote unquote, the same verse. Just to show, to give a glimpse, guys, this can be endlessly comprehended. And each one of the 100 commentaries do not touch what the other commentaries say. Like Mahaprabhu explained in the Atmaram verse in multiple ways. So I'm saying all this to say, even if we will meeting every day, studying every verse, doesn't mean that we can exhaust the meaning of the Bhagavatam. We could stay with one verse for eternity. So what we will do, rather than a linear or analytical type of study, reading verse by verse, we'll go through different verses. I will say probably through my favorite Srimad Bhagavatam verses, which most of them are also considered the most important verse of the Bhagavatam by our different acharyas. So we'll be quoting some of them, we'll be referring to others, we'll be referring sometimes not maybe to a verse, but to a certain section, to a certain lila, to a certain narrative, sometimes to certain commentaries, to some verses, whatever is required for us to remain aligned with the living heart of the Bhagavatam. That's for me the ethic of the study. Now, let's keep our heart beating at the same pulse that the Bhagavatam's heart is beating, right? So let's continue threading the silver thread or golden thread in honor of Mahaprabhu. So someday again, today, these first four classes, we will be doing an introduction, just preparing our heart to enter into the heart of the Bhagavatam. We may study the very first few verses, the Mangalacharan of the Bhagavatam. But someday we may find a verse that can be read as we did in Gaur Purnima. Oh, this verse speaking about Mahaprabhu. And by reading that verse, we may refer to other verses who are in other cantos, 5 cantos after that point similar things. So we will connect all of them and we will return. Or someday we will find a section in first canto. Here Sukadeva Goswami speaks about the sacredness of the material world. I will go to other sections and verses that speak about that. So we get a glimpse of how the Bhagavatam all throughout its pages is making those points. Or, I don't know, sometimes we will find verses that seem to speak about woman as inferior. And we may need to bring a bunch of those together. Okay, today we'll concentrate on this and show how the Bhagavatam actually is not saying that at all. Or then on one day we will take a tour to the hellish planets, so to say, and try to understand that section. Or some other sections that may feel awkward, difficult to understand, unnecessary, and try again to concentrate them in a class or in a number of classes, rather than addressing them every time they come. And if there are questions and doubts, we will bring those, like Parikshit Maharaj is bringing those. When Sukadeva Goswami is speaking about something, sometimes Parikshit Maharaj says, that sounds weird. That doesn't make sense to me. Why you say that? In a respectful way. But we may have still questions. As much as I may try to clarify, still there may be questions that beg to be addressed. That's how Parikshit Maharaj does in the Bhagavatam. That's how Arjuna does in the Gita. And that's how we are invited to inquire comprehensively. Pariprashnena Sivaya. So again, we won't be going through every single verse, not necessarily always even following the exact chronology of the Bhagavatam, which, by the way, the Bhagavatam doesn't present an exact chronology. If you have studied the Bhagavatam, you will realize that sometimes something is being said, and eventually another thing is said, and then the previous thing comes back to the story. So it's not following like a, so to say, linear chronology, but it's bringing different things according to the need of the moment. So we will try to honor that ourselves, that dynamics that is already present in the Bhagavatam. So whenever we need to go back and forth to make a point clear, to have a proper integration of the essential message of the Bhagavatam. So as the title suggests, again, we will try to focus on the living heart of the Bhagavatam. And as the title hopefully clarifies further, that implies a journey into the essential message of the Bhagavatam. Or as I like to say, the silver thread, or like the other day came in Gurpurnim, the golden thread of the Bhagavatam. Because there are many sections, many themes, many topics, but as we will see next week, all of them exist in a certain context. Different narratives that seem not to make sense. What does it have to do? What's the connection between Rasa Lila and universal form and endless descriptions of dynasties of kings? How to put all that together? So we have to understand the different main components of a Purana and how there is a particular topic that is the main one and the other ones exist in context. So we'll try to navigate all this, Srila Siddhar Maharaj will call a jungle of sounds and make sense of them, because a text without a context remains a pretext. So again, our methodology for the study of the Bhagavatam in modern scholarship, the name that it receives is called thematic reading. Rather than linear reading or analytical reading, is thematic reading. Like means we will be studying a text by identifying a central theme or a bunch of central themes, the core of the text, again the living heart, and we'll be gathering passages from across the text that illuminate that theme, not proceeding strictly in a linear way. Again, there is support for this in the Shastra. In classic Vedic hermeneutics, hermeneutics implied how to understand, how to study sacred scripture. So in classic Vedic hermeneutics, this could be called many ways. One of those is samanvaya. Samanvaya, which means to bring together the various statements of scripture to reveal their unifying intention. This is famously stated in the Vedanta Sutra. The fourth sutra, the fourth aphorism, says Tattu Samamvayat. So I like to refer for a moment to that section because it's very interesting and it parallels the Bhagavatam. Because the Bhagavatam describes itself as Sarva Vedanta Sar, the essence of Vedanta. So somehow whatever we find in Vedanta Sutra, which was compiled before the Bhagavatam, is there in the Bhagavatam. So in the Vedanta Sutra we have many aphorisms, but the first four are called sometimes the Chattu Sutri, or four aphorisms, and four essential aphorisms, considered by most to be the most important aphorisms and that give the gist of the complete text. So I'll briefly mention them. I promise I won't go too long. And connect all this to see how the fourth one converges into this idea of samambhaya, of thematic reading scripture in a way that is harmonizing, holistic. So Sutra 1 of Vedanta Sutra. Sorry, I'm not writing that in Sanskrit. You can do your research later. I trust you are good boys and girls and students. Sutra 1 says, Atato Brahma Jiknyasa. You may have heard that a few times. Which means now, therefore, inquire into Brahman. Now is the moment to inquire. Atato means now, Jiknyasa. Inquire into Brahman. And Brahman, again, doesn't mean impersonal Brahman. Brahman means the absolute. Actually, the very meaning of the word Brahman is the one who expands and makes other expand. So if now is the moment to inquire about the one who constantly expands, the inquiry will be similarly ever expanding, right? Again, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. It's another way of saying Atato Brahma Jiknyasa. Eternally inquiring, eternally. So now can refer, now that you're a human being, now that you can read these pages called Vedanta Sutra, it's time to inquire into the Absolute, which is vast, expansive, and makes everyone else expand as well. So the second sutra replies to a question that may appear in regards to the first sutra, though the sutras are not presenting any questions, but are replying in between the lines questions. Because the second sutra basically says Brahman is the first sutra says, now is the time to inquire into Brahman. So a natural question will be, so what is Brahman? Right? Imagine if I go on the street and ask someone, okay, it's the time to inquire into Brahman. The person say, I got everything till the word Brahman. So what's Brahman? So the second sutra replies to that question. That is not in the text, that is in between the lines. So second sutra, which happens to be the very first lines of the Bhagavatam, so that we can see the correlation between Vedanta and Bhagavatam, Janmadiya Syajata. That's how the Bhagavatam starts also. So Janmadiya Syajata means Brahman, remember, who is Brahman? What is Brahman? Is that from whom the origin, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe proceeds. That's Brahman, the source of everything. So again, the Bhagavatam begins with that line. We will get there when we study the first verse of the Bhagavatam. But that first few words say a lot. Brahman is the source of everything. So in other words, if everything is sourced by Brahman, everything is sacred, everything is divine. Everything is ever expanding like its source. Okay, then the question is, okay, now I know who is Brahman. But you told me that I have to inquire into Brahman. So how to inquire into Brahman? How to know about Brahman? That's the imaginary question in between the lines. So Sutra 3 says, Shastra Janitvat. Means Shastra is the womb from which knowledge about Brahman comes. Yoni means womb. No? So Shastra, or sacred revelation, scripture, is the womb through which knowledge of Brahma is revealed. Okay. And for us Shastras, we will make the case in these days is Bhagavatam is the ultimate Shastra. Jiva Goswami makes that case. We'll get there eventually. But then comes the fourth sutra, that is the main one I want to take you. So the question that the fourth sutra replies is, okay, so Shastra is the one through which knowledge of Brahman can be obtained. How to study Shastra? How to approach sacred revelation? So the fourth sutra says, Tatu samanvayat. So there the word samanvaya comes. Brahman, this absolute, is understood through samanvaya, through the harmonious synthesis of all the scriptures. In other words, to a way of approaching scripture that includes reconciliation, harmonious synthesis, systematic agreement. Not that you approach the books and everything is contradictory, fragmented, pointing to different directions and you cannot make sense of anything. No. The methodology to approach scripture, again, this is not Swami Padmanabha in his Bhagavatam course, that's here in the Vedanta Sutra. A methodology should be harmonious, harmonizing, holistic, synthetic, like the Vedanta Sutra recommends. Tatu samanvaya. In other words, the golden thread. To follow the golden thread, the main theme, the living heart, essential message, you name it. There are other Sanskrit words that are used in our tradition pointing to the same thing. Sangati, like reconciliation again. So again, in practice, this means how to approach, in this case, the Bhagavatam, in such way, okay, identifying which is the central teaching of the text. What's the text pointing to? We'll go there soon. And how then to interpret individual passages in light of that whole, in light of that main intention, main theme. Not isolated, not alienated, not out of context. And therefore bringing together verses then from different sections to illuminate that core principle. Again, a text without context becomes a pretext. So that will be our methodology. Whether you call it thematic reading, the living heart of the Bhagavatam, samanvaya, or as I say, honoring Mahaprabhu, the golden thread methodology. But that's how we will be trying to embark upon this journey. And of course, since I mentioned Mahaprabhu, and we started saying how the whole Gaudiya Sampradaya is a result of how Mahaprabhu read the Bhagavatam, what he found in the Bhagavatam, how his particular take on the Bhagavatam. And of course, that means that the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya will have a particular take on the Bhagavatam. which is different from other traditions that also study the Bhagavatam and will have their own take. In fact, the Srimad Bhagavatam is in one sense very universal, like the Bhagavad Gita. You have people from all traditions reading the Gita. Bhagavad Gita is not a Gaudiya Vaishnava text. It's a text that is read in a certain way by Gaudiya Vaishnavas. But there are other lineages, other Vaishnava lineages, other non-Vaishnava lineages, Advaita Vedanta. They read the Bhagavad Gita and they find Brahman and support to their perspective in the Gita. Like I recently wrote this series of articles on the Gita and religious pluralism and how can you read scripture to support Brahman, Bhagavan, different forms of realization. So the same happens with the Bhagavatam to some degree. You can read the Bhagavatam and we will see that many sections of the Bhagavatam, especially for Canto 10, will focus on Narayan, Vishnu. Every time God appears on the scene, it's not Krishna, it's Narayan. Of course, Krishna and Narayan are the same person. So there's a place that you could read the Bhagavatam to favor Narayan Bhakti, Vaikuntha Bhakti. There are sections in the Bhagavatam that you could read as favoring Advaita Vedanta, even. Becoming one with Brahman. And followings of Advaita Vedanta do Bhagavad Saptaha. They read the Bhagavatam for 7 days in that light, interestingly. Of course, there are sections, the Bhagavatam can be read to support Braja Bhakti. And all the other options in between that you can imagine. And that's why all these different people from different lineages are lecturing about the Bhagavatam. And in one sense, we will say everyone is correct. No? So the spirit of these studies is not to say only the Gaudiya Vaishnava reading of the Bhagavatam is the correct one. Not even I will say only the Gaudiya Vaishnava reading is the best one. It's the best for us. But it may not be the best for other people. Right? So just trying to make that clear. No, we are not here to become, to augment our sectarian and tribal thinking. At the same time, there is a specificity again in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, in the reading of the Bhagavatam. So there is a specificity and there is a universality at the same time. Veda Ved. So we're all trying to focus on what's the golden thread of the Bhagavatam from the Gaudiya Vaishnava perspective, from Mahaprabhu's own lenses. So at this point, of course, you may be wondering, which is the golden thread of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Is there one to begin with? Because again, like many people may read the Bhagavad Gita, and people, like Prabhupada will say, people read the Gita and they do not know there is a conclusion to the Gita, that the Gita is pointing somewhere. They just think it's just a bunch of ideas. So similarly, some people, or even us, we may read the Bhagavatam. As I say, we may try to finish the book, or some people even want to buy the set and have it shiny on the leg, so they are good boys. I bought my Bhagavatam set, but you never even open it. It's all covered with the plastic thing. So some people can read the Bhagavatam, try to finish, at least buy the thing, but we may not even know, like people does know there's a conclusion to the Gita, we may not know there is a golden thread to the Bhagavatam. There is a zenith point that the Bhagavatam is building up to, warming up to, a culmination point toward all the rest of the work is trying to shine light on. And how, again, big part of the Bhagavatam is a preparation for that, a building up, a foundation, warming up, context, however you may like to call it, for us to properly understand the essential message of the Bhagavatam, the golden thread. So which is the golden thread? Our living heart of the Bhagavatam? That's what we will be exploring next class. That's how it works. I'm throwing you into a pool of separation now. Yes. That will be part 2 of our introduction series next Monday. So now I will be putting my sharing to rest. I'm trying to be a good boy and not transgress the 1 hour limit. And we will open space for questions. If you have any questions, as I said, please, we are inviting you to write them now down. In written form, you can send them to my private chat in Zoom as concisely, as clearly as possible. Comments or questions, and we have a few minutes to deal with that. So I'll see, okay, if I'm receiving a few things. Okay, probably some of your questions have been already answered because some of them were sent before or after. So I'm reading a few here. Vishaka is asking, are you going to talk about the different ways to read scripture? I mean the literal way, the allegorical way, and the esoteric way? Yes. That will be part of some of our introductory classes. Remember, we have a whole month of introduction, so part of that will be that as well, in terms of how to approach the scripture. Yeah. Okay, what else? Okay, there are some questions that I may not reply, but I will reply eventually. For example, like Kendra is asking if I can please speak a little about a particular verse. But that's what, and he quotes the verse, Tam prasangam mama vidya samvido. But I plan to do that eventually. So I don't want to mess with the main theme that we are trying to present today. The idea, of course, is that the questions you are presenting in each class are related to what we are talking in the particular class. So we remain thematic. So sorry for keeping you in anticipation, Kendraji, but I plan to for sure address that particular verse, which is one of my favorite ones of the Bhagavatam. But that's a verse from the third canto, so we may need to wait a little bit about it. So bear with me, please. What else? Okay, there is a question or comment by Mukunda. It's not so concise, so please next time, all of you, be a little bit more concise. Says, I heard you speak that Srimad Bhagavatam title has in it Mahaprabhu, Mahabab, Sri Radha. Anyhow, that the title of the Bhagavatam speaks about Radha and Krishna and the madness of Radha and how that points to Mahaprabhu. And yes, and I will talk about that in the next class. So, again, sorry to make my answers very short in that regard because that will be an absolute spoiler to next week. But you briefly know about it, of course, Srimad Bhagavatam, no? The madness of Sri 4 Bhagavan, and I'm giving you a hint about what's the golden thread of the Bhagavatam. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. We'll be trying to connect all that with Mahaprabhu, of course, the Istadeva of our Gaudiya Sampradaya, and how all this is also elaborated by the Goswamis. We'll talk about that next class as well, how basically all the books of the Goswamis are an afterthought on the Bhagavatam, are an elaboration, an extended version of the Bhagavatam, and how it all converges in the figure of Mahaprabhu himself. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Kanupriya is asking, is it okay to ask questions from previous classes? Yeah, we can do it, of course. As much as it's not like, I don't know, we are on class 24 and you are asking me something from class 3, because it may take a little time to even put the two things together, what we were talking about 5 months ago. But if it's relatively close and connected and still we are in that current, yes, of course. Of course, some of you may see this class, may not be connected live now in Zoom, and you will be seeing or re-seeing the class in YouTube. I may have a question, I may like to ask the question in the comment section, but to be honest, I don't know how much time I'll have during the week to address questions in the comment section in YouTube. Try your best, and if I was not able to do that, we can try on the next class, and the next class, and the next class, and in this question section, yeah, we can bring some questions from our other sharings. What else? Bhadra from New Zealand. She's saying, likely you will discuss Srila Vyasa. Is he Krishna, a Shakti-Avesha avatar of Krishna? Is he still living in the Himalayas? When did he write Bhagavatam? And anything else about him? Yes, we plan to do all that also, Bhadra. Some Vyasadev inquiry. There are many things to say about that, of course. So yeah, we'll be talking about that. Actually, in all the questions you are asking so far, or most of them, will be covered up in the introductory classes that we will be doing during this month to warm up. So We will be addressing that as well. Thank you. Okay. Let me go to the main chat if there is anything here. Someone is asking if the class will be recorded. Yes. Vishaka says, I am so excited about this. Me too. Really looking forward to this journey together. It's a journey, it's a pilgrimage, yeah, into the great mystery of the beautiful Bhagavatam. Thank you, beautifully put. It's a mystery. That's an important point. Thank you for that. Because again, I wouldn't like that the final fruit of this study is toxic certainty about the Bhagavatam, right? Okay, now I know the Bhagavatam, right? Like people who get initiated and think, okay, now I'm initiated. No, that was the initiation of the initiation. That was the beginning of the process. So again, if you are really studying the Bhagavatam, the moment you read the last verse of the Bhagavatam, you feel, okay, I need to go back again. I need to start all over. And over and over and over and over and over. I mean, and again, not to say I've read the Bhagavatam many times, but I read the Bhagavatam many times. I'm not saying I'm understanding that perfectly, but it never becomes stale. That's my point. It's not that I finished reading and I have this feeling of, okay, finally I've completed my study of the Bhagavatam after reading it 10 times, 20 times. I'm done with it. It's actually the exact opposite. The more you read it, the more you feel you are just beginning to grasp it. Right? So that should be the ideal fruit of these studies, that we are all left to a very humbling space of awe and wonder and like, wow, what's this? Right? Childlike astonishment. What else? Jagannath Prabhu is quoting directly what Srila Prabhupada said that I referred before. When he said, you want to see Joan of Arc in Srimad Bhagavatam, why don't you take Joan of Arc of Srimad Bhagavatam? Any activities of devotees, that is Srimad Bhagavatam. So yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam is basically any love story between God and his devotees. Let's put it from that broad perspective, and we will explain more that next week. Now, Srimad Bhagavatam is not limited to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Again, last thing we want to do is to justify sectarian claims in the name of a universal text such as the Bhagavatam, which again, the beauty is that so many people from so many traditions read the Bhagavatam and use the Bhagavatam to support their claims. So that shouldn't be a problem. We shouldn't feel these guys are competition to us. Right? Like why the Balabis are using the Bhagavatam. It's our exclusive property. Why Advaita Vedantins dare to do a Bhagavat Saptaha to support their Advaita Vedantin reading? That's a scandal. No, we should be happy that the text is universal enough to support all this, and at the same time we should be happy with our own particular Gaudiya Vaishnava approach. We shouldn't feel threatened by people interpreting our main texts in a different way. There's place for that. Okay. So far I'm not finding any other question. So I'm asking publicly if anyone has anything else. You can write it down. We have still a few more moments, a few more minutes. And meanwhile, in case something else comes, and something came from John, will you place Srimad Bhagavatam into a literary category of Puranas or talk about the division of Vedic literature in some other way? Yes, guys, it seems that you have some mystical power, some siddhis, and you're reading my mind and you know what I will be talking the next 3 weeks. Because all of that is in my mind, basically. To also set the Bhagavatam in the context of other Puranas into the broader Vedic scriptural corpus and historically how is that the Bhagavatam manifests, what's its role in connection to other books. Again, from our Gaudiya perspective, different people will say different things, and of course different, even scholars, we have different opinions regarding things like the historicity of the Bhagavatam, the times of its composition. If we think of the Bhagavatam as one book in history, again, we can speak from that perspective. We can also, and we should take the broader approach, that not limiting the Bhagavatam to one particular book. So yeah, we'll all try to. I'm happy that basically all of your questions are how to say, confirming the topics that I will be talking the next weeks, because that somehow makes me feel okay. We are resonating on a similar frequency, and what's an intuition or a necessity for you to be addressed as an introduction, as a preliminary study of the book, is something that I was planning to bring to some degree or another. Again, we could just stay with any one of those questions or topics you mentioned for a long time, but hopefully we can do it as comprehensively as possible. Okay, so I think that's it for today in terms of questions. Before we're leaving, I'd like to leave you with some homework. Being good boys and girls. Some homework back home. But short one, again, I won't ask you to write a 300-page essay or something that will take extreme time, but just some prompt to bring some further contemplation on what we have talked so far. So in connection to the topic, of course. So the basic question for you to imagine, to enter into a healthy space of imagination, and there's place for imagination. So what do you feel might be the living heart or the central message of the Bhagavatam? And maybe you can write a few sentences or whatever you feel about it. So spend some time at some point between this class and the next one, contemplating, feeling what might be, or what might be for you the living heart of the Bhagavatam, the central message. What do you need it to be the central message for you? Not to limit the text to your particular case, but also understanding that sacred texts may have a ultimate zenith point, converging height, but also may be able to speak to each one of us wherever we find ourselves on our journey. And it's important to acknowledge that dimension. Like both the Gita and the Bhagavatam say that. Right? Where Krishna says, different people come to me and I'll receive them all. The Bhagavatam say, whether you have all desires, no desire, one desire, come to me. So how, not only what's the living heart or the central message of the Bhagavatam objectively, but subjectively in your own personal case and journey, what's the central message that you need to hear? So you can write something about it. Badra is writing something. How many other times has the Bhagavatam been spoken prior to Srila Sukadeva? We will be addressing that also, Badra. Thank you so much. It's interesting, and it's beautiful that you have been just like hacking my computer and checking my notes and my ideas for the next classes. Maybe you have some hacking system over there, and that's why you're asking all these questions. But yeah, we will go to the different sessions of the Bhagavatam. And there are many, actually. There are many. Okay, so I will put pause to the recording, but to finish, to those of you who are connected live, I will invite you to a breakout room to close, as we used to do with some of our other Zoom meetings during the week. We'll conclude with a breakout room, breakthrough room, hopefully. And I will give two main prompts for you to share in the intimacy of the breakthrough rooms, which one of which will be, what has been your personal relationship with the Srimad Bhagavatam so far? And it can be anything. It can be inspiration, confusion, overwhelm, healing, curiosity, a mixture of all of that. What has been your personal relationship with the Bhagavatam so far? And then, what will you most like to receive from this study series? You most like to receive, you may most need to receive from this series. So these two prompts. So we will make groups of 3 or 4, and each one will have like 2-3 minutes to speak. So you organize among yourself in the Zoom breakout rooms, but I will post the recording here. So we officially close the recording, offering pranam to Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Sri Gadadhar Pandit Prabhu, topmost reciter of Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premanand Hari Hari Bol.